Billionaire discovers homeless mother's HEARTWRENCHING struggle to feed her baby, his amazing awakening or descent into chaos. David Hartman slumped against the granite wall of a towering skyscraper, his mind racing as he stared blankly at his phone. The latest reports from his tech empire laid bare a dismal quarter, the kind that drastically affected the stock price and sent tremors through his carefully orchestrated world. Images of lavish boardrooms, stock tickers, and power suits swirled in his head like a spinning top ready to tip over. Was he just a puppet in a cutthroat game, chasing shadows over numbers that defined his worth? He had conquered the business landscape and amassed a fortune, yet there was a tightening knot in his chest, a feeling of unease that had grown too heavy to carry. Against his better judgment, David found himself diverting from his usual path of sleek cars and executive meetings. Instead, he wandered into a local park, desperate for a moment of reprieve. The sun poured golden light through the branches, tinging the scene with an ephemeral beauty that felt foreign to him. As he strolled, lost in thought, he nearly walked past a young woman huddling on a park bench, cradling a tiny baby wrapped in rags. Something about her broke through the walls of his privilege, her weary eyes gleaming with a fierce survival instinct. "Excuse me," she croaked, her voice hoarse yet determined. David felt an unexplainable urge to stop. Sarah, that's what she said her name was, spoke of sleepless nights scouring the streets for odd jobs, the sting of rejection mingling with the desperation of trying to nourish her daughter. His world, filled with corporate strategy and market shares, seemed to dim next to the raw reality she presented. How could he have ignored this? The shadows of his skyscraper world loomed larger now, obscuring the relentless struggle that existed beyond boardroom debates. Before David could process it all, an unsettling sense of responsibility speared through him. He, a billionaire with every luxury at his fingertips, could not simply walk away. How many others like Sarah had he turned a blind eye to while obsessing over his empire? Churning thoughts morphed into aching guilt. Deep down, he felt an ember of compassion ignite a desire to push beyond the familiar and confront a discomforting truth he had avoided for too long. And yet was this just a fleeting moment of compassion? Would he falter under the weight of the expectation to act? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined to change a narrative he had previously ignored, David vowed to leverage resources and influence for the betterment of families like Sarah's. Plans began to form. But his path quickly tangled with resistance. A rival, who thrived on exposing vulnerabilities, began to sniff around, casting doubt on his newfound mission. Was this initiative genuine, or just a ploy for image repair? The tension mounted within him, forcing him to question the very motivations guiding his actions. Now, with his vision expanding beyond mere corporate gain, David's internal turmoil deepened. Every step toward his goals seemed laden with anxiety. Should he commit to this unfamiliar avenue, risking his reputation, or retreat back into the gilded cocoon of his corporate identity? The stakes were high. His place was on the high road, but now, doubt nipped at his heels, paralyzing him with fear. As he prepared for an upcoming address to local business owners, he felt the resounding weight of his choice. Would he dare reveal his connection to Sarah's plight and in doing, expose his vulnerabilities? The audience awaited, but David's heart felt like a caged bird, fluttering wildly against the confines of doubt and fear. Could he truly stand up for something greater than himself, or would he hide once again behind the shield of success? The air grew thick with anticipation as he stepped forward, unsure if he could face the crowd when all he felt was uncertainty. The moment David walked onto the stage, the chatter of the crowd faded, replaced by the pounding in his chest. Each heartbeat seemed to echo the question that had been swirling in his mind: would he be able to share his truth without faltering? The white-hot lights bore down on him, amplifying his vulnerability in front of a room filled with influential business leaders, many who had only ever known him as the consummate success story. Standing at the podium, he cleared his throat, searching for words that felt genuine and real. What had started as a simple plan to support families in need now loomed before him as a personal revelation, a reflection of who he truly wanted to be. "Today, I want to talk about a subject that many of us ignore," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "Empathy in business." The words were heavy with newfound meaning. He recounted his encounter with Sarah, the homeless mother, risks lingering in the back of his mind. What would they think of him? Had he truly changed, or was he merely playing at being a savior while trying to save face? As he spoke, the more he dug into his beliefs, the more cleared his mind became. He wasn't just exposing a narrative of poverty, he was unraveling a much darker truth about himself. He had hidden from this reality, surrounded by wealth but starkly disconnected from the life lived by countless individuals. The realization burned hotter as he continued to lay bare his journey, recounting moments of recklessness, indulgence, and the emptiness that accompanied them. His voice gained strength, echoing amidst the silence of the crowd. "I've spent so long at the top that I forgot what it's like to truly live. Today, I stand here to express responsibility, not only to my shareholders but the community that surrounds us." Each word felt more liberating than the last, as if he were casting off an oppressive cloak. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some looked skeptical, while others leaned in with curiosity. David felt their eyes boring into him, both judging and assessing. For the first time, he saw his words not merely as a performance but as an invitation. Could he inspire others to see beyond their own success? As he concluded his address, a wave of hope washed over him. The groundwork he aimed to lay was now clear. He intended to create a foundation to help those in dire circumstances. Yet as the applause began to fade, David recognized a price for his honesty. He could almost feel the gaze of his rival, the one waiting for him to slip, to show himself weak. Images of his own flaws now seemed baked into the very core of his mission. Was he ready to face the backlash? Backstage, adrenaline coursed through him, igniting both excitement and fear. He had stepped into a new realm, one where he was an actual player in a different game, a game where the stakes included not just wealth but lives. It dawned on him that real commitment came with sacrifice and the risk of losing everything, including reputation. As colleagues approached, their reactions varied. Some commended his courage while others eyed him warily, suspecting ulterior motives. Each response nudged his determination in one direction: transparency. Leaving the venue, David felt a new resolve coursing through him. The weight of his former self now felt lighter. With that heaviness gone, he noticed a clearer path ahead. What would it take to transform not only his company but also himself entirely? Yet in the embrace of this newfound direction, a nagging discomfort settled in the pit of his stomach. Would he be able to withstand the scrutiny to come? The harsh gaze of judgment was a cold steel that awaited him. Just as the door closed behind him, he caught a glimpse of Sarah again, the embodiment of change. With her face imprinted in his mind, he took a deep breath. The true test was yet to come, and it loomed just ahead, darker than he imagined. The time had come to face not just his past but any shadows that lurked around the corners of this new path he had chosen. Could he navigate perilous waters, or would the tide of adversity pull him under? David stepped into the brisk evening air, feeling the crispness slightly cool his flushed face. He leaned against the sleek facade of the venue, grappling with the gravity of his recent declaration. Glances swept over him, some congratulatory, others laden with skepticism. The applause echoed still in his thoughts, but as the adrenaline wore off, reality seeped in. The stakes were sky-high, and he was now in uncharted territory. As he walked toward his car, he replayed his speech in his mind, the rawness of the moment still resonating. Was he truly ready to transform not just his image, but his life's work into something fueled by genuine compassion? Questions swirled like leaves in a storm. Would this newfound resolve be enough to shield him from the impending scrutiny, the judgment that loomed over corporate moguls like a persistent shadow? Upon arriving home, David sank into his favorite chair, the familiar leather embracing him like an old friend. But the comfort was short-lived. In the silence, his thoughts grew louder, each acknowledging a past riddled with chaos masked by success. He realized then that the foundation of his future couldn't just be a lofty mission statement. It needed discipline, strategy, and above all, a deep-rooted commitment. Transforming a company is easy. Transforming myself? He whispered to the empty room. That's the real challenge. Thoughts of Sarah intruded once more. Her struggle felt intimate, as if their paths were forever intertwined. She had ignited something within him that he couldn't yet articulate, a spark urging him to confront his own apathy head-on. The successful model he had relied upon was cemented in a stark duality. Power and profit stood tall on one side, a facade of happiness obscured by wealth on the other. He couldn't keep ignoring the companionless dirt roads those families walked, the tangible reality his corporate success had distanced him from. His role had shielded him from the struggles of those less fortunate, and now that veil was being torn away, that he retrieved his notebook from the drawer, scribbled ideas swirling in his head. The foundation would need to be practical, not just charity, but a scaffold for sustainable change. What if they could implement job training programs, offer mentorship, or invest in rehabilitation initiatives? As he jotted notes, clarity began to crystallize his broader vision. Several possibilities coalesced into a single mission: empowerment through skills and opportunities. Yet even while designing this new framework, the undercurrents of doubt continued to battle, threatening to engulf his resolve. Would the business world accept his pivot toward empathy, or would he be ridiculed for naivete? His competitors were already whispering, waiting for his next misstep, and he stood at the precipice of what could either be a groundbreaking milestone or a catastrophic failure. With a deep sigh, David stood up and paced the room. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the uncertainty of public perception. A thought crystallized in his mind: if he was going to steer this ship, he needed advocates, those who would champion his cause, share his vision, and perhaps even intercede on his behalf when the tides turned against him. His phone buzzed, a reminder of the board meeting he descheduled for the following week to introduce this initiative. Suddenly, the stakes became real. He wasn't talking over coffee with friends anymore. This was the threshold of accountability. Could this really work? He mused, considering the reactions of those who stood to gain or lose from his venture. Would they embrace the chance for change or circle back to the comfort of indifference? The air in the room felt charged, as if every subsequent second swelled with potential discovery. He could no longer shy away from resistance. He had to confront it head-on. He could rally his colleagues and make an impact, but only if he could keep them invested in his vision, not just financially but emotionally. As he set the notebook aside, determination sparked. The battle might loom larger than his past failures, but with every moment of doubt came an opportunity to shift, to grow, and ultimately to become the leader he had always longed to be. What lay ahead would not be easily navigable. The challenges awaited just around the bend, and this time, he would face them not alone but as an agent of change. Just then, the phone buzzed again. It was a message from Sarah. "I heard about what you said today. Can we talk? I have an idea that might help." The screen lit up with the potential of new direction. Would this connection lead him deeper into the heart of transformation, or would it unravel every goal he'd set forth? David stared at the screen, Sarah's message an unexpected lifeline in his storm of uncertainty. He could feel the pulsing energy of possibility, yet a shadow of hesitation lingered. What could she possibly bring to the table that he hadn't already considered? But then again, recent revelations about his own ignorance had revealed a deeper yearning for connection, not only with his own ideals but with the human stories often eclipsed by corporate targets. The meeting with his board loomed on the horizon, casting a long shadow, but he felt a compelling need to respond to Sarah. This could be the catalyst he needed, an opportunity to anchor his new vision in the lived experiences of those who required it most. "Let us meet tomorrow," he typed, his fingers racing over the keyboard, a surge of determination pushing aside the doubts. The next morning unfolded with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of his minimalist office, illuminating the vast emptiness of his desk, pristine yet stark. He took a deep breath before arranging his thoughts, ready to articulate his vision for the board later that day. But the specter of failure loomed large, and with each minute, his anticipation morphed into dread. Sarah arrived punctually, her presence infusing the stark office with warmth. "Thank you for meeting," she said, her voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. There was a quiet power in her, something he had often overlooked amidst his own preoccupations. "Your message caught me off guard," he admitted, leaning forward. "I'm eager to hear how you think I can make a difference." Her eyes widened, a spark igniting behind them as she opened a worn folder, revealing photographs and notes. "I've been working on a community project aimed at equipping single mothers with the skills and resources to support their families. I think it aligns perfectly with your initiative." David absorbed the images, faces of mothers and children, their expressions a mix of hope and desperation. Each photo captured individual realities that resonated beyond statistics. "These stories, they tell a truth I've avoided," he murmured, feeling the weight of each narrative settling within him. "Exactly. They could be a powerful part of your foundation's mission," Sarah said, her enthusiasm infectious. "What if we create a mentorship program, pairing successful women with those striving to change their circumstances? Real-life stories could shift public perception, especially from someone in your position." He felt the room pulse with untapped potential. "But why trust me?" he pressed, voicing the insecurity that gnawed at him. "I'm just now beginning to understand the complexities." Sarah paused, her gaze steady. "Because you're willing to learn. You're trying to shift your focus, and that sincerity can inspire others. If you can convey these realities to your board, it could change everything." Deep inside, David felt a shift, a reckoning. Perhaps this was not just about him transforming his image, but rather about embracing the vulnerability required to understand and advocate for those in need. What they were discussing had the potential to be revolutionary. This wasn't merely a corporate strategy, it was a heartfelt commitment that as the meeting with his board approached, David's resolve solidified. Unearthing his own emotions and shedding the veneer of the untouchable executive was no small endeavor, but it felt essential. "Let us make this happen," he declared, a newfound assertiveness invigorating his tone. He would share his triumphs along with the struggles he discovered through Sarah's stories. It was time to convert the sincerity of his intentions into tangible impact. The anticipation built as they began strategizing together, brainstorming how to weave these initiatives into a narrative powerful enough to disarm skepticism. The clock ticked relentlessly, each second reminding him of the thin line separating success from failure, but there was also the thrill, the understanding that changes were being forged here, within these walls, between him and someone whose experiences had the potential to alter lives. As David left the meeting room, he locked eyes with the horizon. This wasn't just about proving himself to his peers, it was about crafting a legacy. But as he returned to his desk, a dark thought loomed: could his own insecurities sabotage this noble pursuit? The intensity of his emotions thickened as he contemplated the repercussions of failure. Would their efforts resonate, or would they fall flat amidst corporate indifference? He sought strength in his commitment to Sarah and the mothers she served. Then, the familiar buzz of his phone disrupted his thoughts. It was a reminder for the board meeting. Time to face the music, he whispered to himself, heart racing. Would he emerge connected to a broader purpose, or would it fracture under pressure? All or nothing, David resolved, stepping forward into the unknown. As he approached the podium, the taste of desperation mixed with determination, he knew the moment had arrived to not just confront his doubts, but to redefine his entire narrative. David stood at the front of the conference room, the fluorescent lights glaring above him like judgmental eyes. The board members sat before him, a mix of expectant faces and crossed arms. Each was a reminder of his position, once cocooned in the sanctuary of success but now on the precipice of something new, a venture seeded with vulnerability. The air was thick with tension, and he could feel his pulse quickening. This was his moment. Taking a deep breath, he began. "Today, I want to talk about impact, the kind of impact that goes beyond our corporate goals and connects us to real lives." His voice steadied with each word, the familiarity of the statistics slipping away. He could almost feel the weight of his previous self dissolving. As David shared Sarah's photographs, He saw the flickers of curiosity mingling with skepticism on the board members' faces. He leaned into the unease, embracing the discomfort of their silence. "These are not merely numbers, they are stories," he said, gesturing to the images. "Stories that reflect our failures, our successes, and ultimately, our responsibilities." He recounted Sarah's ideas for the mentorship program, weaving in his own reflections about the blurred lines between privilege and struggle. He spoke about the harsh realities these mothers faced, painting a vivid picture of one mother he had learned about from Sarah, a woman who was trying to feed her infant while balancing multiple jobs. The image of her desperation felt like a weight in his chest, yet it fueled him, igniting a fervor he had seldom experienced in boardrooms. David noticed a shift, the atmosphere morphed, subtly but distinctly. The murmurs of doubt began to drown in hints of empathy. He dared to make eye contact, locking in on the faces of his colleagues, searching for signs of resonance. The vulnerability he displayed was tangible, a momentary stripping of the corporate armor he had been wearing for years. Then he confronted his greatest fear. "I know my presence and past can seem at odds with such realities. I've lived in privilege, which has shielded me from truth. But I want to change that. I need to change that." His admission hung in the air, hard and authentic. Somewhere in the depths of his own self-acknowledgement, David discovered a power he hadn't realized he possessed. This wasn't solely about leading a company anymore, it was about leading with compassion. He shared his goal of needle-moving initiatives, the kind that could shift public perceptions from indifference to engagement. But as he looked around the room, he saw flickers of uncertainty resurface. A board member, known for asking the tough questions, broke the silence. "David, sounds noble, but have you considered how this affects our bottom line?" The operator of the machine was confronting him directly. Hesitation washed over him, a vestige of his former self clashing with his newfound purpose. Was this truly about financial gain? Or could they forge a path that declared their values while also succeeding financially? Financial stability is important, but I believe we can marry these two ideals. Beyond just profit, we have the opportunity to lead with meaning. His voice trembled slightly, awareness of his own naivete creeping back in. If we don't step out of our comfort zones, we won't evolve as a company or as individuals. The board room fell silent. Each member appeared introspective, as David continued to navigate the balance of transparency and aspiration. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded his vision, requesting their insights and, more importantly, their commitment. After what felt like an eternity, a board member finally nodded in reluctant agreement. "We'll need to see a solid plan, David. A real plan." It was a small concession but significant, a lifeline thrown into murky waters. "Absolutely. I'll work on the next steps," he answered, finding a spark of confidence igniting once again. David realized that they needed to embrace this journey together, and perhaps his own insecurity could transform into a shared strength. As he departed the meeting, however, a new dread settled within him. What if he couldn't deliver on this vision? What if he faltered in the face of unforeseen challenges? The weight of responsibility pressed upon him heavier than before. Now, it wasn't just about his reputation, it was about the lives intertwined with his decisions. He needed to dive deeper into this new mindset, raw truths they all needed to confront. Determined, he picked up his phone and texted Sarah, "We have to meet again. I have a plan, but I can't do this alone." What he didn't know was that the challenges ahead would force him to reckon with both external pressures and his own internal struggles in ways he never anticipated. As he stared out the window, his resolve steeled in that moment of uncertainty, he silently vowed to embrace the journey. But as he looked back down at his screen, she had replied with a simple message that rattled him, "David, I hope you're ready for the truth. It isn't pretty, but it's necessary." What was she alluding to? Would he be able to face whatever was waiting on the horizon? David entered the small, dimly lit cafe where he had arranged to meet Sarah. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the earthy aroma of baked goods, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside him. As he took a seat at the back, he felt exposed, unequipped to confront the truths Sarah hinted at. The internal pressure was palpable, every tick of the clock amplifying the weight of his expectations. When Sarah arrived, she radiated a calm determination that both reassured and unnerved him. Her presence reminded him of his own insecurities. They exchanged brief pleasantries, but the air crackled with unspoken urgency. He knew they were not here to reminisce over coffee. "David, I appreciate you wanting to discuss plans, but we need to address the realities first," Sarah said, leaning forward, her expression earnest. He swallowed hard, bracing himself. "I know there are challenges, but I believe we can create an initiative that is both ethical and profitable." His words felt rehearsed, more a shield than a foundation. "Profit is important," she acknowledged, "but at what cost? You need to understand what you're up against." David's mind raced. He had once been insulated by numbers and projections but now felt adrift in an ocean of moral complexities. "What are you saying?" he ventured cautiously. Sarah pulled out a folder filled with photographs and statistics, gritty images of hunger, hardship, and despair. Each one felt like a stab in the gut, a raw reminder of the discrepancies he had always avoided. "This isn't just about numbers or pretty initiatives. It's about lives." The weight of her words sank in. "These families depend on us for change, David. They can't afford for us to fail. Can you handle that pressure?" He opened his mouth to respond but found no words. The contrast between his former life and the one Sarah represented was stark, an echo of privileged ignorance. What had he truly understood before today? Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to connect the dots. "I need to understand your world better, the nuances of their experiences. How can I do that?" Her gaze softened, and she glanced at the images as if seeking solace. "You need to talk to them, witness their struggles firsthand. Numbers alone won't bring this to life for you. You can't lead until you see." The realization crashed over him, a kind of awakening tinged with fear. Here lay the discomfort he was avoiding, the intimate encounters with the struggles he needed to face. "I want to. I need to," he replied, the determination within him stirring. Sarah nodded, a flicker of approval in her eyes. "I can arrange visits to community hubs, shelters, places where they gather." David clenched his fists, the thrill and terror mingling. "What if they don't want to talk to me? Or worse, what if I can't handle it?" "Then that's your process," she replied evenly. "Being uncomfortable is part of change. You need to see how deep the roots of these issues are. Ignoring them is no longer an option." Her words resonated with a haunting truth he couldn't ignore. Failure was not just about his ambitions or the company but etched into the lives of those affected by indifference. "I'm ready to confront my fears," he stated, the resolve hardening within him. Yet, the specter of doubt still lingered. Could he withstand the harshness of reality? Was he equipped for this new emotional landscape? As they finalized the logistics for his first visit, a sliver of excitement broke through his anxiety. Perhaps this journey could lead to something transformative, not just for the women and mothers he sought to help, but for him as well. As their meeting concluded, Sarah stood, fixing him with an earnest gaze. "Remember, David, healing won't be linear. Prepare yourself for the discomfort, and allow it to reshape you." The cafe suddenly felt small, the walls closing in with the weight of so much possibility and fear. He nodded slowly, aware that he was standing at the threshold of profound change. Leaving the cafe, a new awareness washed over him. Facing the truths about systemic poverty would reveal not only the struggles of others but also the depths of his own character. The challenge loomed large. He could not shield himself from the hard truths he had chosen to confront. As he stepped back into the bustling world outside, his vision sharpened. The real work was just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. David's phone vibrated, breaking his reverie. He glanced down at a new message from Sarah. "Next week be prepared for stories you may not want to hear." A knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach again. Would he truly be ready to face the rawness of reality that awaited him? David awoke early the next morning, the rising sun casting a gentle light across his bedroom. He tossed in bed, the sensation of dread wrapping around him like a cold blanket. The thought of the upcoming visit gnawed at him, his first encounter with the stark reality of what he had spent years glossing over. Each tick of the clock felt like an urging, a countdown to inevitable confrontation. His thoughts spiraled again and again. He questioned whether he was capable of handling what lay ahead. Was he really prepared to listen and absorb the tragedies that would collide with the comfortable existence he had known? With shaky hands, David brewed coffee, the routine an anchor amidst his swirling anxiety. He glanced at his reflection in the kitchen window, a face not yet marked by the burdens he was about to carry. But how long would that last? He couldn't shy away from the emotional toll this work would require. Feeling versus calculating, this was uncharted territory. As he sat down at his desk, he dug out the folder Sarah had provided. The images from yesterday were haunting, but there was also an urgency within them, a call to action he could no longer ignore. Each face represented a story, a struggle that demanded empathy. He shifted uncomfortably, chiding himself. He needed to prepare his heart as much as his mind. "How am I supposed to see this?" he muttered, trying to reconcile the complexity of what he was about to undertake. "I don't know their lives." Yet, a flicker of realization sparked within him. The journey wouldn't be about saving anyone, it would be about understanding, connecting. Deciding to accept this as part of his growth, he opened his laptop. Research turned into an unending stream of statistics, articles about poverty, systemic issues, historical contexts, narratives of despair and resilience. Each fact grounded him deeper into a reality rich with emotion, the flood of knowledge both terrifying and eye-opening. And then, amid his readings, he stumbled upon a story about a single mother struggling to feed her infant. The rawness showcased not merely the act of poverty, but complex layers of desperation, hope, and love that overwhelmed him. He could almost see her waiting in line for a food pantry, clutching her child and battling against societal indifference. A surge of empathy coursed through David, a determination strengthening. This was his cue, his transformative moment. He had never truly turned the mirror on himself. What qualifications did he have to even begin enacting change? His path couldn't be one of a detached benefactor. It had to be one of deep-rooted connection. And the following days, the visits went underway. He remembered Sarah's words about discomfort, and as he prepared to step out of his car at the community hub, his heart pounded. It was as if he stood at the edge of a precipice. Each experience would strip away layers of his ignorance. The first mother he met was Maria, her eyes bright with stoicism despite the weariness etched deep into her features. As they spoke, she didn't just share her tale of hunger but also her dreams of vision for a better future for her daughter. It took a while, but he found himself opening up too, sharing snippets of his own life, his own struggles, not as a way to steal the narrative but to align with her pain. Here was the lesson: vulnerability could bridge gaps that statistics never could. As their conversation unfolded, David realized he was shifting fundamentally. The act of listening transformed into a profound act of understanding. Each story he absorbed tied a thread tighter around his heart, intertwining his existence with theirs in a web of shared humanity. But what he also discovered was the weight of responsibility growing heavier. With knowledge came obligation. And that was the crux. The emotional labor could not be undone. The comfort of his prior existence was slipping away, revealing the callousness of ignorance he had once embraced. As David drove home that night, a turbulent mix of anger and resolve churned inside him. He had looked into the abyss of societal neglect, and something deep within him had shifted. There was no turning back now. Next time, this isn't about listening, he thought, the thought firm, it's about taking action. He could feel the next waves of growth brewing ahead, the need to advocate, to challenge not only his own perspectives but the systems in place. As he parked, the weight of his newfound direction settled in, melding with a sense of urgency. The time had come to face the true nature of injustice, not just as an observer, but as an active participant in seeking change. With a determined breath, he sent Sarah a text: "We need to meet. I have ideas." But what he didn't yet realize was that the real confrontation loomed closer than he anticipated. There were powerful entities whose interests clashed with his vision, and soon, he'd find himself at odds with forces far greater than he could have imagined. David spent the next few days bouncing between the urgency of his newfound mission and the weight of uncertainty. The conversations with those like Maria demanded intimacy he wasn't entirely sure he had mastered yet. He felt like a pretender in a theater, rehearsing lines he knew he needed to perform but hadn't fully learned. Each interaction revealed layers of complexity, empathy bleeding into a mingling of ignorance and insight. After sending that text to Sarah, he felt a sense of anticipation grow. Ideas began to swirl in his mind like a chaotic windstorm. He envisioned gatherings, town halls or community forums, places where voices could unite, transforming stories into a collective roar for change. But a nagging fear clawed at him. Was he trying to assume a role too soon, taking the spotlight from those who lived the struggle every day? Their next meeting came quickly, and he arrived at the coffee shop both anxious and resolved. It was familiar terrain, the warmth of the cafe contrasting sharply with the chilly environment of inner conflict he wrestled with. Sarah waved from a corner, her demeanor calm as always, contrasting sharply with the nerves bubbling within him. "Your text was a surprise," she remarked, taking her seat and fixing her eyes on him. "What's on your mind?" David leaned forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I've been thinking about what I can do, after listening to Maria and others. Changes don't just happen because we understand their pain. I need a plan." Sarah's eyebrows lifted, interest peaked. "Go on." "Well, I want to create a platform for stories to be shared," he rushed, words tumbling out in a rush. "But not just to tell them, I want to find ways to lift solutions directly from the communities. I want them to lead." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "That's admirable, but you realize you'll face pushback, right? Institutional resistance, financial barriers. There are people with power who might not want you challenging the status quo." Each barrier she mentioned felt like the sharp edges of a boulder dropping into his stomach. "I'm ready for that," he replied, albeit with less confidence than he tried to convey. "But how can I navigate that? In order to push against that weight, you need allies. Building a network is crucial. Find those who are engaged and willing to participate. Authentic connections within the community are your strongest surprise weapon." David felt the enthusiasm reigniting the fire of action within him. "I can start meeting local leaders, activists, anyone willing to challenge the system together," he said slowly. "Exactly. But be prepared." Sarah's gaze sharpened, grounding him. "Remember, authenticity doesn't suit everyone. Some may resent your presence. Your privilege will be difficult for many to overlook." David took in her words, recognizing they were laced with hard-earned wisdom. Vulnerability could bridge gaps, but it might also draw lines in the sand. Would his privilege undermine his intentions? Each interaction would be a test, revealing the depth of his understanding. Would he risk walking into hostility? "Expecting pushback gives you power," Sarah remarked, as if reading his internal struggles. "And power delivers responsibility. Use it wisely." The conversation flowed, as David chronicled ideas, envisioning structures that honored those he had started to engage with, ideas blossoming amidst the churning doubt in his gut. The urgency of action pressed heavily in his mind, and as they wrapped up their meeting, he felt a resolve building. Stepping out into the night, he was a man transformed by collaboration. Ideas encapsulated into plans, ready to challenge, ready to fight, yet with every step toward his objective, a shadow loomed larger in his consciousness. How could he enact his vision when he was still learning to listen? By stepping into action, was he risking dilution of authentic voices in favor of his agenda? Days later, he stood once again at the community hub, where the air thick with unspoken stories wrapped around him. But this time, he wasn't alone. He had reached out, gathering a handful of committed individuals eager to impact their world. "What do we want to do?" he prompted as they clustered under fluorescent lights. The hunger for real change sparked in each responder. But as the planning began, David felt a chilling realization settle within him. This was only the beginning, and looming just on the horizon were those figures with the power to crumble their vision. Find strength in vulnerability, he reminded himself as they spoke, scanning faces eager for change, but what he didn't yet grasp fully was the weight of the institutions he would soon confront, their power reaching further than he imagined. Days later, a call arrived, a meeting with a major funding entity poised to challenge everything he had worked to build. How he would respond? The confrontation loomed large, threatening to unravel his nascent plans. David paced a narrow path outside the community hub, the chill of the evening air settling over him like a cloak of uncertainty. The excitement he'd felt just days earlier began to feel burdensome, the promise of change weighed down by the looming shadows of institutional barriers. His meeting with the funding entity was just days away, but instead of preparing, he felt paralyzed by doubt that he had gathered a group of passionate individuals, each with their own stories encompassing both struggle and resilience, yet, the challenge of maintaining authenticity in the midst of his privilege gnawed at him. Anyone could wield a platform, few could do so without eclipsing genuine voices. Would his motives ever be seen beyond the lens of his background? Sitting down with his notes in the dim light of his apartment, he faced the pages he'd filled with potential plans and structures. Ideas meant to empower were merely projections if not rooted in the lived realities of those he had tried to uplift. The pressure to perform weighed down on him, threatening to suffocate the intent behind his mission. His phone buzzed, an eager message from one of his group members. "Are we still meeting to discuss the draft?" It read. David hesitated, instinctively glancing at the main points he wanted to cover. Was he equipped to guide them through this crucial moment? With a deep breath, he tapped back a reminder of their meeting time but felt the anxiety bubble within him. The tension of preparation pulled at the corners of his resolve, his questioning mind churned with anxieties about inadequacy. Could he navigate the intricacies of funding without losing sight of their vision? Arriving early at the hub the next morning, he set up chairs in a circle, opting for openness rather than hierarchy. The members trickled in slowly, exchanging warm greetings, but David scanned their expressions, searching for signs of confidence that he felt he lacked. As they gathered, he felt the weight of their hopes resting on his shoulders. "I want to hear from each of you," he said, feeling a bit more grounded. "What do you envision this platform becoming, and how can I support that?" One by one, they shared their dreams, the room vibrating with sincerity. Maria spoke passionately about her neighbors' struggles, how their voices had been silenced by neglect and misinformation. Listening, David experienced a deepening sense of connection, a realization that he was a part of something much larger. His privilege no longer felt like an anchor but a channel to facilitate these stories, but just as he absorbed the collective energy, his mind wandered to the impending meeting. What if they rejected their vision? Would their hopes crash down, all because of the barriers those with power threw up to maintain control? His insides twisted at the thought of it all, the prospect of failure looming larger than ever. "Can we prepare a pitch that genuinely reflects our mission?" he asked, anxiety threading his tone. One of the group members, Sam, nodded firmly. "Let us focus on stories. People respond to what resonates with them. Remember, it's about humanity, not just statistics." David grasped at this insight, drawn to the idea that humanity could act as a bridge. They worked together, weaving each narrative into a tapestry of shared experiences, inching closer to the heart of what they truly wanted to communicate. Yet, just as the plan started to crystallize, an unsettling realization slammed into him: he was not merely leading this effort. He was placing himself directly in opposition to those who held the reins of the very funding he sought. With every word they prepared, he could feel the eyes of the institution watching, waiting to judge not just his ideas, but his very essence. As the meeting drew near, David felt the blood rush to his ears. The act of confronting powerful entities felt imminent, brewing inside him like an electrical storm. He mustered all the determination he could, but the anxiety twisted tighter, yielding both fear and a strange inkling of excitement. The time had come to face not just their struggle for funding but the very expectations that had been set upon him. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he buckle under the weight of his own uncertainties? He left the hub, the sharp chill of the wind matching the sharpening of his nerves. Despite the communal fires they had ignited within their discussions, the question remained: could he wield his privilege as a tool for genuine change, or would it lead to a misalignment that could derail their mission? A heavy weight settled in his stomach as he walked, too acutely aware that the next few days would test him in ways he had yet to fully comprehend. The initial steps toward confrontation were now within his grasp, but the looming uncertainty whispered doubt into every corner of his mind. He had come thus far, but it was just the beginning of a much larger battle. David stood outside the concrete structure where the funding meeting was set to take place. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the bustle of the city, a vibrant reminder of growth and potential. But today, the stakes felt monumental. He took a steadying breath, preparing to confront a powerful entity that could alter the course of his transformation. As he entered, David caught a glimpse of the boardroom, the stark, polished table, the glimmer of corporate insignias, a world he knew all too well. But today felt different. This time, he was not there as the billionaire seeking to further his empire. He was there advocating for voices that had long been silenced. The room was filled with serious faces, some skeptical, others curious. David set his folder down on the table, heart pounding against his chest. The thoughts of failure washed over him, but he pushed them aside. He had been preparing for this moment for weeks, absorbing stories, engaging with community voices, and reinforcing his vision for change. "Thank you for meeting with me," he opened, looking around the table. "Today, I come not just as a businessman, but as a fellow human being committed to creating a direct impact in our communities." With each word, he felt layers of the corporate facade he had worn for years start to peel away. He spoke about the mothers he had met, people like Maria whose resilience and hope ignited something inside of him. He wove their narratives into his pitch, infusing passion into the statistics. He shared photos, each one a window into the lives transformed by opportunity. For the first time, he was selling not just a plan but a vision steeped in human experience. As he spoke, he felt the momentum shift. The initial skeptics leaned in, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. He found himself sharing his realization that funds could equip them not just with resources but with dignity, agency, and empowerment. This isn't charity, it's a collaborative effort. These mothers are the experts of their own lives. We need to provide them the platform to lead. An uncomfortable silence fell after his presentation. Then, one of the board members leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You say they have agency, yet you're still here asking for our resources. Can you guarantee our investment won't fail and become just another forgotten project?" David's insides twisted. "I would be remiss to promise that no initiative is without risk," he replied. "But I can promise our partnership will be rooted in authenticity. We will build metrics grounded in the community, what they need, how they grow. I won't take a step without them." As the dialogue continued, more questions emerged. He could feel the tide turning as the energy shifted into a more collaborative sentiment. It wasn't just a presentation anymore, it was a discussion, a dialogue that sought to unite different landscapes for a greater goal. After what felt like a lifetime, the head of the board, a formidable woman with a reputation for challenging norms, leaned forward. "Your commitment is commendable. We understand the importance of investing in people, but our resources are limited. Convince us why our investment in this initiative stands out." The weight of her challenge hung in the air. This wasn't just about the concept but about the life he wanted to create, a tangible connection between privilege and accountability. "Because it's more than just funding, it's about changing perceptions," he said, feeling a surge of confidence emerging from deep within. "This change starts with honest storytelling from the front lines. When our community thrives, we all benefit. Let us be a catalyst for sustainable change that impacts lives and, in turn, strengthens our businesses." Silence enveloped the room again, but this time, it felt different. After what seemed like an excruciating pause, she nodded, her decision solidifying the transformative power of vulnerability. "You have our support on one condition," she said. "We want to see measurable outcomes from this initiative, and everyone involved must be part of the progression." With a profound sense of relief, David's mind raced ahead to possibilities. They had agreed to partner not just as investors but as allies in a shared ambition. He nodded vigorously. "Yes, absolutely. We will establish a clear framework and invite the mothers to lead the metrics, empowering them in every way possible. The meeting concluded with handshakes, commitments, and the promise of community integration. As David left the building, the crisp city air welcomed him, invigorating his spirit. This was no longer merely a professional journey, it was a pivotal chapter in his life, one where he had not just confronted his fears but transformed his purpose. Days passed, and the initiative officially launched. Together, they created workshops, mentorship programs, and community forums for sharing those narratives that once felt too heavy to speak aloud. They began to weave a new reality not just for the mothers but for David and his team as well. Each encounter shattered previous misconceptions, and he was now not just a bystander but a participant in the collective drive for change. David reveled in this transformation. It became apparent that he needed these stories as much as they needed the support. Each conversation equipped him with insights that once eluded him in his corporate towers. The discomfort he once feared had kindled a sense of purpose, and gradually, the shadows of doubt transformed into solid confidence. With their success, the initiative gained recognition, sparking interest from media, other organizations, and individuals eager to join. David welcomed scrutiny, understanding it meant transparency, a testament to his newfound commitment. As he stood in the community hub, surrounded by grateful mothers, laughter, and shared ambition, David felt a clarity wash over him. He had not just conquered the corporate world, he had proven the power of empathy in driving change. The satisfaction settled warmly within him, solidifying his resolve to continue advocating for those narratives that had changed him forever. This chapter, imbued with a sense of fulfillment, reflected a broader journey of personal growth, a victory rooted not in wealth or position but in genuine connection and service. Moreover, David realized that by choosing to embrace the shared humanity within adversities, he had ultimately defined his true legacy. He had faced the chaos and emerged transformed, demonstrating that vulnerability was the strongest pathway to real power. Now, dear viewer, this is your moment to seize the story of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will move you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and elevate these powerful narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending, we want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories know the importance of supporting our journey.